Hey everyone, Sean here, and welcome to this lovely review featuring The Boys. I guess you could say this is probably going to be somewhat of an overall review of the series, but definitely wanted to focus on the finale, right? And that is season 5. I actually recorded a mid-season sort of review, just kind of do like a checkpoint for myself for The Boys because I had things to say, but some things kept me busy, so I couldn't get around to get that edited. And by the time I was able to, it was already way into it, and then a lot of things were happening, especially with the later half of this season. And I guess it was to a point where I might as well just like save it all for this review right here. And man, this season was kind of like all over the place in terms of like if I liked it or not. I do like a number of things that this season had going, but at the same time, the overall setup for said finale, I think just was not it. Getting there, the process of it was not it. Right away, I think the best part or the best episode, if we're gonna just go by which episode was the best, in my opinion, I think it was honestly episode 1. I mean, I love the tension behind it, the setup to it. Other than the fact that the whole thing with Butcher, how they set him up from season 4, the end of season 4, up to here, was a little weird. Like I always really thought that he was going to be the ultimate villain in his entire thing, besides Homelander, of course. But then they just kind of like, oh, they're back together again, kind of thing. That was the one thing that always bothered me throughout this whole season. But I suppose there are other things that did just overtake that, especially by the end of this whole series. Man. So yeah, episode 1 was definitely the best one. Of course, that was with A Train and how his story sort of concluded. I thought that was very well set up, and then of course it was a very nice foreshadowing to come when Homelander had his hand on A Train and then the last few lines that he said to Homelander before the sort of said execution was a great. I think that was a great setup for things to come. But really, after that, I mean, I think episode 2 and even 3, I think they were okay or fine. I love the ending for episode 2, right, with Soldier Boy doing the Undertaker basically. After all that with the virus, that whole setup with the virus, and for only for it to not be that effective unless you just want to, wipe out a bunch of the rest of the soups of the world, I guess. And but with the Soldier Boy and he just V1 really was that special, and I think that was might have been a turning point, right, of the quality of this season. Maybe I could be wrong. That could be highly debatable. But yeah, episode 3 had its moments too, especially when Homelander did that beatdown, and it of course revealed that that was Ryan, and I was right on that. I thought it was Ryan because of the wound on Homelander's chest. I mean, I was like, yeah, the only one who really can do that is Ryan, because he shares his powers and everything. So, but anyway, that was like honestly the most significant part I can remember from episode 3, and then 4 was of course the episode where they're trying to look for V1, right? So I wouldn't consider it that much of a filler episode. I know like a number of people were considering it at the time, but I think in retrospect, episode 5, right after that, was more of that filler episode that people were portraying it to be. Episode 5 was that, really. But that one had some good things to take away from also with, the storylines with, well, especially Firecracker, right? Firecrackers was definitely the most significant. And by the time her story wrapped up, I thought that was a pretty good setup to all the way to the end of that for Firecracker. I thought very differently about Firecracker of how her story was going to end. It was very more typical. Oh, she fights somebody, she dies for it, right? But no, it really shows how she has begun to sort of doubt this whole shtick that Homelander was really sticking to with the whole religion thing, him being God and all that stuff, him viewing himself as like the first, in his words, the first coming, really the real coming of a Jesus-like figure. Firecracker started to really question it, and having that sort of pillow talk with Soldier Boy, all that stuff. And then she, threw away the Jesus figure, which kind of like was like, a metaphor for, losing that divine protection sort of thing. And then she loses her life for it because she really wanted to, get that chance again with Homelander. But she should have, the door was right there and she should have taken it. And literally, Homelander just like, hey, pack up your things and go. I mean, who knows? Who knows if that was really true or not? If she was just gonna just walk out scot-free like that? I don't know. It wouldn't make sense because she knows a whole lot about Homelander, and I would have figured that he would I figured that he would have executed her anyway, regardless. But anyway, she tried to like stay and overstayed her welcome, and she got killed by the left wing, right? As it was so clever. Ooh, right? Maybe it was a coincidence. I don't know. Maybe some people were like, oh, the writers are too dumb too dumb for that to be clever or something. I don't know. Whatever. But I thought that was kind of funny. Okay, so 6, 7, all that fun stuff. So 6 was the Golden Geisha stuff, and Homelander pretty much getting the V1, right? Because of Bomb Sight, I think his name was. Which I thought he was pretty cool, but we only got so much out of it. And I guess his power essentially is that he is able to crash into things dramatically. He can fly. He's essentially Homelander, but without the laser eyes, pretty much. I feel like, yeah, he does have the durability. He does have, of course, the immortality plus because of the V1, and then he can just crash into things. So therefore, he should have that crazy durability. But there's, Soldier Boy, I guess, he's still able to snap his neck if he wanted to, but they stopped because they wanted to talk this out, talk about love, I guess, and then how Bombsight was actually jealous of Soldier Boy's, what he got. Soldier Boy was always like the favorite. Bombsight was just always second rate by comparison to him. He wanted all that, but Soldier Boy was like, nah. I wasn't, from a certain somebody, which was Stormfront, I guess. Bombsight wanted to be with Geisha, but he's immortal and Geisha really isn't. And so, the thought of her just passing away and such, he wouldn't be able to live. But then Soldier Boy offers, a gift of mortality, right? With using his nuclear bomb thing, whatever, his beam, and he then proceeded to do this very thing, right? which to be not like cameoed or whatever by the end. You know, we don't really see what they're doing and such, but hey, I guess that's just the conclusion of Bomb Sight and Golden Geisha. But yeah, the whole like setup to him getting the V1, all that stuff was also a little weird. How Sage was like really planning this whole thing out of, so surely Soldier Boy's not gonna, give him or give Homelander the V1, even though Ashley literally read his mind and he started to feel proud of Homelander. And then, but Sage proceeded to this plan and then gave him the location. Hey, the V1's over here with Bomb Sight. Soldier Boy came and then there you go. Like, she, I guess, miscalculated because love is a very unpredictable thing. And that was something she dealt with. And the only love that she ever got was her grandmother and all that stuff. Which, yeah, okay, makes for an effective backstory, at least in some way. But the writing with her ultimately, I think, also was subpar. And the way her story concluded was also just like kind of a nothing burger. By the end, it's just like, oh, she was a plot device by the end of that to be a testing device pretty much for Kimiko and where her story was starting to go. But yeah, Homelander gets the V1. That was, getting there was a weird setup, but he got it. It was like, oh, okay, all right, we started to see some potential there. And in the next episode, it was just like Homelander trying to set up a theme park. Soldier Boy was like, nah, I'm out. And Homelander chokes him out, puts him back in the freezer pretty much. And yeah, that was it for Soldier Boy. Like, I was like, oh my God, like all that stuff, all the flip-flopping and such, like all that for this, like there was so much, there was supposed to be so much going on with Soldier Boy and Homelander. But the flip-flopping and where it actually wound up by the end of it, for them anyway, or for Soldier Boy at least, was just like, that felt very flat, pretty much. And I was just very disappointed, especially by the time at 8 came around. And there was just no Soldier Boy at all. Like, very little mention of him. The boys didn't even like calculate, like, oh, what about Soldier Boy? What if he shows up? Blah blah blah. They never really like think about him, even though he's his father, right? Homelander's father. They just saw saw him give the V1 to Homelander, so it's like, yeah, it just it definitely didn't make sense, right? But yes, episode 7. That's when, of course, we had finally a death of one of the boys' members, which is Frenchie. And admittedly, I did feel for Frenchie, his how he met his end. The setup for it, getting there, of course, was also a little dumb because the whole thing with the zinc, right? It's like, that's the only thing that was zinc in this whole thing. It's like, well, you might as well take a look at it, right? Take a look inside. But I guess with Frenchie, he taps, and ultimately Homelander, goes to Frenchie, and Frenchie pretty much taunts him into into being in that uranium nuclear room, and Frenchie does the suck my nuts kind of thing. And apparently, okay, well, yes, and ultimately he dies for it, right? Willis, before that, of course, Kimiko becomes essentially the Soldier Boy. He, I guess, they did something to her and then put him in the nuclear room, right? Because otherwise, it's just like, I don't think you can just like put a soup like Kimiko into that room, that nuclear room, and then microwave, or not microwave them, but like nuke them for like 30 seconds or whatever, and then whatever, right? I guess there's some sort of formula for it from the notes that they were able to get from the Russians or something like that. Somehow, I really forgot like how they were able to get that stuff. If something happened in that moment, right? So that's why like the whole setup was just like kind of weird out of nowhere. And people argued, why didn't you just do that? It's like, oh, it's kind of a gamble. I feel they wouldn't just go straight into like sacrificing their friend like that to get that key to defeating Homelander like that. But because of the virus didn't work, or ultimately it's not gonna really work on Homelander now, there's no point. So unless yeah, they're just trying to get all the other soups, but sure. I mean, it could still cripple Homelander, right? It still did a number on Soldier Boy. They could just use the virus to cripple Homelander and then try to kill him there, and try to do it like that. But but they went to the other route, which is Kimiko becoming Soldier Boy pretty much, and yeah, that was the route, and then Frenchie did his thing, dies for it. That definitely hit me because it's like immediately I think I like Frenchie. Was he my favorite? Not exactly, but he was definitely part of the boys, and seeing even one of them go like that. However, right? However, they will go out. It definitely was sad, right? In the comics, of course, Frenchie, Kimiko, or the female, and Mother's Milk or MM, all die, right? So I had this expectation that Kimiko was next somehow. She was going to be the ultimate sacrifice to help bring down Homelander, but and then of course there's MM, and you also can't help to think that because there was an episode literally called the man called Mother's Milk, the female, and Frenchie or whatever, right? Their names were on the episode name, the title, so I thought they were all gonna die. But only Frenchie got that. But it was still sad, right? But then, and then the final episode came, and it started off, them burying Frenchie, having a little bit of a funeral service or funeral sort of process, and break the moment kind of with Frenchie's admittance to staring at people's assholes, literally buttholes, right? I guess he had a thing for assholes. He even put like cameras or something like that somewhere so he can like see people's assholes and such. But then it, of course, went back into the thing, and I also want to say like the humor was also like very like hit or miss at times. Like the writing for that was just like right. Some of them was funny, but then there's just really obvious ones that are just like right. It's just like it always consisted of a fast food place, and then how it smells or something like that, and some gross sexual joke to go along with that. It started to become like Family Guy, that same rhythm of that, and it definitely started to get stale pretty fast. But there were some like very nuanced or subtle moments when Homelander had that moment of seeing Madeline again and had the epiphany, right? That whole epiphany moment with the angel and everything, and that whole scene was so well acted by, of course, Anthony Stark, with his expression and everything. And then Madeline was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong, my boy?" and then Homelander's like, I love that. Like, that got me every single time I watched that again and again. So there are highlights from this, definitely, from this season. It's just that the other execution, the process and everything was that's where it went wrong. And by the eighth episode, this was the finale. This was it, guys. Those 7 years it has concluded by this, right? And so episode 8, we see the speech, and things are about to go. Now, the boys, right, getting there was also just like so flat. There's this tunnel, and then they just happen to just be able to get to the Oval Office or whatever, just like that. And then, very quickly, they find Homelander, and then they fight it out. Kimiko wasn't the priority. I guess maybe she got stronger, because Homelander didn't, like, laser in half, right? Instead, she just got lasered, like, this little push. But it was really like, okay, the fight was merely pretty good. But as the idea of this being the finale is like, that's where it starts to fall flat. And then you have Ryan, right? Of course, there was before a talk between one last talk between Ryan and Homelander. Pretty much, Ryan said, "Fuck off," all that stuff. Homelander offered him another chance because he's his son, and Ryan said no because he's just not having it anymore. And Homelander goes to the office, does the speech, which ultimately was very like. That of itself was also very disappointing because Homelander is not there with the audience at the auditorium to see their reactions, right? Instead, he's in the Oval Office pretending to be not only the president, but the Jesus, right, or God. And after smashing the president's head and the actual president's head and everything, and then what's her face, Ashley, became Madam President for a moment. Whatever. Homelander does the speech. He saw the words, "Oh Father" and "children," whatever, right? Whatever the key words were. It triggered him, or it started to trigger him, but then the boys came in. And that's how the climax started. See, there was this whole expectation from the audience, including myself, especially with the posters and everything, that Homelander would just go like scorched earth. There's always this talk about scorched earth from Butcher and everything. And so there's always this like hope that we see Homelander just go absolutely batshit crazy to do said scorching earth. I wasn't expecting for the entire world to go kaboom or whatever. At least wherever that state was, right? I think it was like around DC or whatever. I was expecting some sort of destruction. But we got none of that, man. All we got was people walking out or whatever. They did this whole thing with the believers and non-believers, like they did in episode 7. And, we missed out on that because it was all separated. It was all isolated, right? And mind you, this whole thing was televised, right? The camera was still rolling. It was on the ground like this. And this episode showed everything about Homelander pretty much. And the whole process, well, not the whole process, but like, the beginning of the battle and then the end of that, right? They saw it. They saw Homelander for what he really is, I guess, right? When they fight, Ryan comes out of nowhere and wants to help bring down Homelander. And in that same process, of course, Starlight takes care of the Deep once and for all. So that of itself also was a little disappointing. I mean, the fact that yes, the deep met his end at the sea was fine, but I think they should have gone that with that like a different way, like actually drag him underwater, really give him like a piece of hell before they do the execution. I mean, sure. I mean, it does kind of like come off as like a Mortal Kombat stage fatality, so it is a little cool, but at the same time, it could have been better. Really give him, really drag it out, kind of for the deep because he kind of deserves it because he's been given so many chances to redeem himself, and so this character just never redeems himself on purpose because he always wanted to just be that dude bro. Like he wanted to be the right hand man of Homelander for whatever reason, which that of itself could have been an episode. And the deep could have gotten more of a nice juicier send off. He after all that time he was able to live, right? This is the time when he really faces all the shit that he has done, right? Including making Starlight, making Starlight do the thing from what was it, season 1, right? That whole like the sexual assault incident, whatever. And then of course all the things he's done with the sea creatures, right? Whether it was his intention or not, including like the dolphin and then the whale, where the other ones, like there was also, of course, one of the big ones was Ambrosia, I think her name was, with the octopus. There was Timothy, right? The other, like I think it was like a squid or a smaller octopus, and then such other things. There was a bit of a Easter egg, I guess you could say. Oh, justice for Ambrosia, but they didn't really. I don't think they said anything about Timothy. But I guess it made more sense, bringing up Ambrosia instead, because like it wasn't like the Deep wanting to, or Kevin wanting to eat Timothy because he was forced by Homelander to do so. So maybe that doesn't make sense in the end. But with Ambrosia, yes. I guess they had spies in the Vought, right? Those fish tanks. They can somehow like send word to the sea somehow, and they know about Ambrosia, and they do the thing and had the tentacle go out of the Deep's mouth, and that's how he goes. Could have happened better, yes. They could have dragged him down underwater. Which is the only time we ever get to see the Deep underwater, actually, only for him to die, right? That would have been kind of cool in that sense, in that sort of irony. Ooh, right? But he just dies instantly, pretty much. So, if anything, he kind of got off easy, right, in a way, because they kind of just didn't waste any time with him. They didn't plan to like imprison him. They didn't plan to torture him for all the things he's done. They just went for it and they just killed him. So it wasn't like this. It wasn't this complete poetic justice. Besides the fact that yes, he died in the water, right? And there was this whole thing about like trying to make sense of why they fought by the beach. And I think I like the theory that that Starlight just wanted him to just fuck off and just go away, because ultimately, yeah, like the Deep is not gonna go. He's not gonna have much to go, right? He could have been on his own little island somehow after Starlight sends him there, maybe, perhaps, and the Deep could have been forever imprisoned on said island. They could have literally had a bit of a Castaway parody with him with a beard by the end, right? And he could have been like the sole survivor of the Seven to tell the tale of how humiliating it was, right? This humiliated piece of shit to tell the tale for anybody in the spinoff. That could have been cool, but no, that's how he goes out. And then we go back to Homelander's battle, right? His final battle. It was essentially them just kind of a lot of like punching, a little bit of lasering, the tentacle getting chopped, and then Butcher said, ow. Ryan helps out too. And then, like, Kimiko finally starts to build up the laser. This rage, this rage is not supposed to be who I am. And then Frenchie comes in her head, of course, in spirit, saying that, well, you're not about the rage. You're about something. You're more than just about the rage. You're more than a weapon. You're not a weapon, right? You're a person, and you're the one who gave me the love. All that stuff, all that mushy talk, and then that gave her that extra bit of motivation to finally pull off the laser, and then that's it, or the beam, and boom, it finally happened. Homelander is powerless, and the way he tried to fly away through the laser, it was hilarious, admittedly. But we only got a little bit of that, and it didn't go on for too long. And then Butcher was just like, "Yep, that's it for you, man." And then, but Homelander, he then finally reveals himself as this pathetic loser, as A-Train put it. There it is, right? And Homelander gets his fatality pretty much. Butcher spikes him with the crowbar. That's supposed to be a signature weapon, I guess, after all. And pops him open like a soda can, and that's it. That's the end of Homelander, the main villain of this whole series. That's how he goes. After all this, tango with the V1, all this stuff, and all the other shit that Homelander was built up to, that's how it ends. I mean, the ending of itself was fine. I'm a little disappointed. I'm just being nitpicky here, but I'm a little disappointed that he didn't get to live to see who he really is, right, as a human. And I even kind of took it to a even bit of a stretch, because I wanted to see him somehow still immortal, but he doesn't have his powers anymore somehow. If that could have happened, he literally cannot die unless he kills himself. But he's too much of a bitch to do so. So he'll just live forever without powers and be long forgotten and be humiliated, right? And depowered and everything. And I just wished that the people can see it live, right? Like with their own eyes, not instead of just like that broken camera, and yes, they had a moment with Homelander willing to do anything to live, sucking his dick, eat shit, all that stuff. The way that was acting was very well done. Like, holy shit, this is Anthony Starr doing work, right? Once again, and one last time, I'm afraid, as Homelander, before he got the crowbar and all. But mind you, this was like the first 30 minutes, right? Within the first 30 minutes, that's all it was, right? That was it. It all wind down to just those first 30 minutes-ish, and the rest of it was them celebrating, and then Butcher sees his dog passing away. I guess he was too old or something. But not before trying to start anew with Ryan, but Ryan said no, because he said, you're a villain too. You're a bad person. So I choose not to. And Butcher then wanted to really finish the job by just wiping out all the soups, right? Not just Homelander, but all the soups. Now, I don't think, people like to argue or like to run away with the point that, the dog was the turning point for Butcher, the turnabout, right, or about face. And Butcher then becomes a villain, right, once and for all. I think he was always wanting to kill everybody or kill all the Supes because he had a resentment to Homelander, and then just he had the whole concept about Supes. He hated them, right, for that. He always had this. He always had an opposition towards the Supes, and he had the virus. So, right, there's no Homelander staying in his way. He was probably going to do it. So he likely was going to do it regardless of Terror dying or not. He was going to do it, you know. But Huey caught him doing it, and so they had this one-on-one in a Vought tower, and they fought it out. Butcher was like, "Hey, I got the virus in the sprinkler system. I pull this trigger, the virus will be unleashed, right?" Huey did ultimately stop him, yes, and that admittedly, mostly that part was okay, or it's good. I think how Butcher meets his end was fine, but it was just Huey, right? Conveniently, I guess, and he then was able to shoot Butcher, and Butcher also meets his end, and that was pretty much it, right? He saw Huey, of course, once again as the spin image of his brother, right? His little brother, or older brother, whatever. I think it was his little brother. Anyway, and I think that's the one time he told him that, and then Butcher goes, and then they have the whole funeral thing again, but with Butcher now, and he's buried next to his wife. Ryan was there, pointing that out. I think that's what that's what they wanted, right? That's the whole thing, right? That's what Clara would want. Oh, that's what he would want. So that's that sort of infamous catchphrase, in my opinion. And then that's when they split off. So now, I guess Ryan is also depowered, right? I guess they didn't really make it clear whether if he is or not, because Ryan got his powers just from being born from a suit, right? Because he's Homelander's and Becca's son, right? And he got his powers without having to be injected with V1 or compound V or whatever. So there's always this theory that because he's a natural born soup, that something like that, the beam would not do it for him to not take his powers away, because he wouldn't technically have V, but maybe he does. I don't know. Maybe he is born with V now, and there you go. I guess it can be passed on genetically, which doesn't make sense, but I guess, I don't know. Maybe it was engineered that way, whatever. But I guess he is. I'm gonna assume he is. There should have been a little bit of an after credit scene that Ryan still has his powers because he's a mutant, right? He's a soup mutant, a V mutant. That would have been kind of cool, kinda, but they didn't even show that much. So okay, so everybody splits off once and for all, and then so they all kind of have their sort of ending, right? So MM and Ryan are like friends, either that or he adopted him as his son. It's a little weird for me. I was like, okay. I wish they probably built that up, just like a lot of things. They should have had this drawn out to really further develop these characters and storylines and such. And so MM remarries his ex-wife, right? Kimiko is in France. She adopts the dog that Frenchie wanted to adopt. She has a Madeline, right? Although I think that Madeline was a little burnt in my opinion, but maybe it was extra toasty. It looked a little burnt. But anyway, she had her happy ending. Although honestly, I think she could have been the next character to die so that she could be with Frenchie, right? You could say. I guess either way, it could have gone both ways. Then, of course, with Huey and Annie, they're together. They run this store together. Oh, Singer is back as the president, I guess, and he calls Huey to run a private sector of, you know, to pretty much carry on what Butcher was doing, pretty much. And Huey said no. He declined the offer because he wants to do his own thing to help, people locally with Annie, of course. And Willis running the video store too. And Annie is now pregnant with their child, right? And they're gonna name it Robin, which is actually kind of nice because it started with Huey and Robin before A Train did the thing. So it ended there, right? And that was it. That was the conclusion of this whole thing, Plus, other parts of the thing, like when it comes to Vought, Stednager is back as the leader again. Ashley is just completely fucked off. She doubled down on what she did, and they immediately had her impeached, and that's it. Ashley is done, right? I guess. I guess she's. I mean, I don't know. I guess that was it. Like, that was the end of Ashley's story, I guess. But I forgot to mention the whole thing with Old Father. Like, I thought he was a pretty cool character, but the only issue is that, well, he was the victim of the crime of this whole season, it was just too short. It was not properly paced or built up to where it goes, and the fact that we didn't like see the destruction that we were expecting, the scale that could have happened with Homelander having V1. We never really got to see how V1 worked with Homelander. Besides that, oh, he's immortal. Great. But we never really get to see, like, he got stronger from the V1. I guess in the end it didn't, because he still got his ass handed by Ryan and Butcher in the end. At least enough for Kimiko to fire her thing, and then that's it. But I guess it was just all about being able to live forever. More than anything. That was the important thing about what that Homelander was thinking for V1. But even then, it's just like, we never really got to see the vast potential of Homelander. Like, he could literally laser everybody, right? And just cause all the destruction. As we saw for a little bit in one of the earlier seasons, when he, imagined himself lasering everybody, including the soldier, all the not the protesters, but like all the people who were like cherry on for Newman, right? At that one time. That was a sneak peek. That could have been it, right? But plus more. There's that poster with Homelander with the world being on fire and stuff like that. There was the poster with Butcher with the crowbar. It was literally the reference to the comic, right? With Homelander above, with a lot of the flying soups and everything. Like, what was that all about, right? Besides just paying homage to the comic, I guess, in the end. And then Butcher being in front of the bot tower being on fire, right? And one person said, and I kind of can get behind that, was that both of these guys, both Homelander and Butcher, never got what they wanted. Ultimately, their ultimate sort of like action was thwarted thanks to, these people, right? The boys. Ironically enough, Huey stopping Butcher, and of course Homelander being stopped by the boys, right? Butcher, Kimiko, and Brian. I mean, and all in all, though, I mean, okay, like there are some cool ideas, but it was just how we got there that really like ultimately made this finale very flat. Is really the issue I have with this whole thing. We never really got to explore more of MM. We never really got to explore more of Kimiko, really. Frenchie, a little bit more Butcher, Huey, Starlight, whatever. But then I almost forgot to even talk about this, right? But holy shit, what was the whole point of Gen V then, right? We never ever got to see the Gen V kids in action. There was this whole buildup, right, of that cast being involved with the boys, right? You didn't even get to see what's his name, Jonathan. We didn't get to see Kate. We just saw Sam. Or no, was it Jonathan? I don't know. Well, Sam. Well, no. Sam is the one who can grow big and small, right? I think it was. Okay. Anyways, we only got to see Jordan. We only got to see Marie Moreau, and Sam, I think her name was, the one who can go big and small. Drive the truck, and they just fucked off. All that stuff about Godolkin, the school, all that stuff. Oh, we're gonna eradicate the humans, right? That whole thing. I mean, I guess that was Godolkin's thing, and that was thwarted. But just the setup, right? The basic setup of Gen V crossing over with the boys cast, the characters, that could have been potentially cool because, of what Homelander can do. Especially by the time he got V1, like, it was such a nothing burger. It all came down to, oh, you can't control your powers. We don't need your help or whatever. Don't help us, right? When by that time in season 2, Marie Moreau did get control of her power. She unlocked her potential. And the fact that she was slated to be this equal with Homelander, they were literally made in the same lab, I think, right? Or in the same project. And it was that whole setup with her. But nothing came out of that. That really, honestly, disappoints me more than, in some ways, than the series finale itself. The fact that Gen V wasn't utilized in here when they were setting up for it in the first place is like, well, it went nowhere. And that honestly really upsets me. It's just like for nothing. So those 2 seasons, which is for nothing. That could have been literally just non-existent. Take out those characters. The story would have been a lot smoother, right? In that sense. But because of what was set up by the end of Gen V season 2, leading up to here, it's like, wow. There could have been just this cool like teamwork, all this stuff, maybe more relationships to be explored, right, with Marie Moreau and the rest of the boys with the other characters too. Nothing, dude. Nothing with Kate's powers, nothing with Sam's powers. He was like the next Homelander pretty much. He was like super strong and durable and such. So yeah, or Jonathan, whatever his name is, right? Sam has the Ant-Man powers now and can control them well now. And so all that other stuff, right, just gone down the drain. It's like, that's it. They just drove the truck and that's it. That's all they did. Take these kids, or they take these people to safety. That's it. I'm also a little disappointed that they couldn't fit Queen Maeve in there, just to kind of show one last time how she's doing and stuff like that. But the actress didn't make time for it because she was already like on her way out with acting. So that was like unfortunate, but okay, a little disappointed in that, but yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much like the big gist of it that I wanted to get out of the way. But yeah, man, like this whole season was like a mess. It was very flip floppy, just like Soldier Boy was in a way of how I felt with this season. I liked it in one hand, but there's so many others. There's so many things to not like about it for this season. Man, like they really dropped the ball on this one. And again, episode 1 was pretty much my favorite, along with episode 2 and some of episode 3. But episode 1 was like the best one out of the bunch, really. And they just really, really just messed it up here. I think the like one true crime of this season, or really this series, really, is just that it was too short for each season. I think it really deserved like at least 10 episodes per season, if anything. Or or this time have a nice long conclusion, right? To really like wrap things up properly. Have a nice like go out with a bang kind of thing, but it didn't go out with a bang. It was kind of just like it went out with a pop, literally, like Homelander's skull. Yeah, like honestly, okay, like honestly, if everything turned out the way it was, right? Okay, I mean, Soldier Boy back in the freezer, but if episode 8 did the destruction and stuff like that, I think that would have made up for it. Kind of. It would have been still like a not perfect season, but I think the destruction scene with Homelander would have like honestly like made things a little more tolerable, you know. But ultimately, it was very, very disappointing. I think, and it's not to say that the episode itself was bad, but because of how all these things were set up, it really didn't properly, like, landed. It didn't really stick the landing. Homelander dying is fine, but I really like to see him live, right? That way he can, like, really see the humiliation, right? And like have people like, call him names and stuff like that. And then, yeah, like Homelander should have gave the speech to the audience. So what was the point of the musical, right? With Oh Father, maybe they canceled the musical because maybe Black Noir died or something like that because they wanted someone from the Seven to be healed or something like that. Maybe that's the reason. But it just wasn't like it was just so rushed. Everything was so rushed. No proper setup for any of these things. It just kind of just like we were expected to believe that's how it played out. There's just so much disappointment. Getting the V1 was a mess. How the whole Gen V inclusion or lack thereof, right, happened. How everything else was rushed too, everything else. This is how it ends, man. Like this was like my favorite series. This series, like I felt so invested, and I haven't had that feeling for a long time. Besides like One Piece or something like that, and there's Invincible. I think this like from the early days of the boys, I felt like this was like such a refreshing take on superheroes after the superhero fatigue, right, with Marvel. It was like making fun of Marvel and everything, but it kind of just became what it was making fun of in the end. And maybe it's for the best now, like that the boys has concluded. But not really, because we have Vought Rising coming, and I think a lot of people were giving that some edge or some abrasion because they felt like they're just setting up for Vought Rising more than actually wrapping up the boys, which I can kind of believe. I can kind of get behind that argument, and so that really like tainted those waters. So that it pretty much prevented the boys to probably wrap up like that. Yeah. So, great series, but ultimately with a very flat conclusion. It has so much potential, but I think it should not be taken away from like all the performances and the moments from the actors and stuff in the rest of the cast. They did a great job with their characters. It was really the writing, and the director and the showrunner that really messed it up. There was also still some imperfections throughout the seasons, especially with the first Black Noir dying that early and stuff. That was another thing too. Like I forgot to talk about the whole thing with the Deep in the second Noir 2. That was also a nothing burger too. Like it was so nothing. It led to nowhere. Like they could have done anything with those guys and it wouldn't really change the story. Oh, they hate each other. It's like, okay. Yeah, it was really just nothing, And of course, Oh Father met his end by the ball gag. It's like, okay. I forgot to mention that, but yeah. I wish for more from him because there was something going on, right? In a way, and I just wish they fleshed him out more. And how he met his end was also like disappointing a bit because it actually doesn't make sense because the ball gag doesn't actually like create a perfect seal, And so if anything, it could have just blow the ball out of MM's hands. It makes no fucking sense if you really think about it. Maybe what should have happened was him doing the scream, and then somebody comes behind and fists them or something like that. Maybe that would have been a little better, or just punch their mouth or go from behind, like anything like that. But the ball gag, I don't know about that. But yeah, if I'm thinking anything else. Oh, Sister Sage. Yes, Sister Sage's story also. Yeah, I think I did talk about it, but yeah, disappointing. Did she need to die or not? I don't know, but it was just also very flat as well. How her story concluded. Okay, she just became average and fucked off to Harry Potter world or whatever in Orlando. I guess there's this running gag about Orlando because the Deep and stuff like that. But yeah, however you may look at it, it was so disappointing. The way it wrapped up and everything, how it got there, and in isolation, these ideas are good, but the overall how it just were implemented, yeah. So, with all that said, I will give this season alone like probably a 6. Overall, because while the performances were actually well acted, the story was just just a mess and such. And of course, you have the ending, like very, very flat of an ending. Some things to take away from, some good things to take away from, sure. But ultimately, that is not the conclusion that we were hoping to see. And I think even like, apparently there were some leaks that were just ultimately wrong or something like that. So it's like, okay. But yeah, great series with a flat ending. Unfortunately, it's gonna stick with me for a while. But otherwise, The Boys as a whole, I would honestly like to give it an 8 out of 10. Just to be a little generous, because I really like the other stuff that it offered. Homelander was just such a memorable character, thanks to Anthony Starr, followed by Butcher with Carl Urban. Those two are definitely like the most memorable characters from that whole thing. Not to say that everybody else is not, right? But these two were just, well, diabolical, right? But I was just really hoping for a more diabolical scene, and we didn't really get that much. So that's it. The Boys is done. We just have the Vought Rising and the Boys Mexico to look forward to, I guess. Stan Egger is still in Vought, so I guess there's some possibilities, right? said, hey, if you go back to Vought, I'm gonna go after your ass or something like that. I'm gonna put a bullet in your head. So there's possibilities of more boys, right? The boys to carry on. But we have those two to look forward to, I guess, and I'll give them a watch, just cause, and because I think ultimately still the universe is very interesting. But it definitely kind of became what it was like, kind of making fun of. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got for the boys as a whole, and I'm gonna miss it though. I'm gonna definitely miss it. And yeah, so thanks. Comment, like, and subscribe really helps out, and I do appreciate it. I know I went on pretty long. It's an hour, but yeah, I mean, it's the finale, so I gotta give it that time. Yeah. Well, anyways, thanks, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Sean out.